I was standing at the altar in my $800 wedding gown when my fiancé Marcus looked me dead in the eye and whispered, "I can't go through with this." But he didn't run. He grabbed the microphone from the pastor, faced all 250 guests, and said, "I'm ending this wedding because I've given my heart to someone who actually understands my ambitions. Vivian Park. Will you be my wife instead?" Vivian Park. The venture capitalist. The woman who had been nothing more than a business associate for the past 8 months. She rose from the 4th row, smoothed her blazer, and walked straight toward my altar like she belonged there. Yeah. That happened. Now listen. My sister says this story will never hit 1,000 followers or 50,000 views, and she's locked away episodes 7, 8, and 9 until I prove her wrong. So subscribe first. Then like, share, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because this is the story of how I married my ex's older brother for revenge. And what happens next? It gets completely unhinged. Stay with me. This is where it truly begins. You want to know the worst part? Nobody moved. My bridesmaids. My cousins. His entire family. All of them frozen like department store mannequins. The only sound in that whole cathedral was the sharp click of Vivian's heels against the stone floor as she glided toward my cheating fiancé. I should have sobbed. I should have screamed. Instead, I laughed. Not a polite little giggle. A full, head thrown back, echoing through the rafters cackle. "You know what, Marcus?" I snatched the microphone right out of his hand. "You just handed me the greatest gift of my life." I turned and started walking down that aisle with every ounce of dignity I still owned, when I saw him. Sitting in the very last pew. He looked like he'd been sculpted specifically to ruin women's concentration. Sharp jaw, dark hair swept perfectly to one side, a charcoal suit that probably cost more than the entire catering bill. And he was smirking, one brow lifted, watching the whole disaster like it was premium entertainment. Our eyes locked. He stood, buttoned his jacket with one hand, and walked toward me. "Miss," he said. Deep voice. Slight accent. Dangerously unhurried. "It appears you're in need of a replacement groom." My brain completely stalled. "I'm sorry, who exactly are you?" "Kai CEO. Marcus's older brother." I blinked. "His brother? You look like you're 35 at most." 34. Marcus's mother and mine share a father. The family tree has some unusual branches. He extended his hand. "And you are clearly far too remarkable to be wasting yourself on my little brother." Behind me, Marcus sputtered. "Kai, what are you even doing here? I didn't put you on the guest list." I invited myself. I had a feeling today would be worth witnessing. Kai's eyes never once left mine. Though I'll admit, I didn't expect the bride to be quite this extraordinary. My heart was doing something completely irrational. This man was gorgeous, mysterious, and genetically connected to my cheating ex. Every warning light in my brain was flashing red. But you know what? I'd just been publicly traded like a commodity in front of 250 people. Logic could absolutely wait. "So you think I'm too good for your brother?" I matched his smirk. "I think you're too good for the vast majority of men." He stepped closer. I caught a trace of expensive cologne, cedar, dark amber, something quietly dangerous. Though perhaps not too good for me. The crowd actually gasped. Marcus looked physically ill. Vivian had the grace to appear uncomfortable. "Are you genuinely flirting with me at my own failed wedding?" "I'm genuinely proposing an alternative." Kai reached into his jacket, produced his phone, and turned the screen toward me. A marriage license application. Half completed. His name already filled in. "Marry me instead. Right now. The venue is paid for, the officiant is present, and you're already in the dress." I laughed again, but this time it was completely real. "That's absolutely insane." "So was what he just did to you." Kai tilted his head toward Marcus. "The difference is I'm giving you a choice. Marry me. Make him watch you choose better. And I promise you, you will not regret it. You don't know me." I know you laughed when most people would have collapsed. I know you're standing here making jokes instead of running to the bathroom to cry. He leaned close enough that only I could hear him. And I know you deserve someone who would never dream of doing what he just did. My bridesmaid Chloe appeared at my elbow, eyes the size of dinner plates. Girl, what is currently happening? I think, I said slowly, eyes still locked on Kai, I'm about to do something either incredibly stupid or incredibly brilliant. Those are usually the same thing, Kai said, and his smile was devastating. I looked back at Marcus and Vivian, huddled together and whispering frantically. I looked at 250 people who had witnessed my humiliation. Then I looked at this impossibly composed stranger offering me the most absurd solution to the most absurd problem I'd ever faced. Okay, I said. Kai's smile widened slowly. Okay. Okay. Let's get married. But I have conditions. Name them. First, you cover the honeymoon I'm no longer getting. Second, you make Marcus's next 30 days genuinely miserable. Third, I grabbed his tie and pulled him down to my level. You better not make me regret this more than I already regret meeting your brother. Something shifted in his eyes. Something warm and certain. Done. Though I think you'll find, sweetheart, regret is the one thing you won't feel. 17 minutes later, I was married. Not to Marcus. Not to the man I'd been planning my future with for 3 years. But to Kai CEO, a man I'd met less than an hour ago, who kissed me at that altar like he'd been quietly waiting his entire life for exactly this moment. The reception descended into beautiful chaos. Marcus and Vivian left immediately. Half the guests were scandalized. The other half were live-streaming everything. My mother locked herself in the bridal suite. My father discovered the open bar with remarkable enthusiasm. And me? I was slow dancing with my new husband, who held me like I was something genuinely worth protecting. So, I said, looking up at him, what do you actually do for a living, husband? Something flickered behind his eyes. International trade and asset management. That is the vaguest sentence I have ever heard spoken aloud. I'm a vague kind of man. Wonderful. I've married a mysterious stranger who may or may not be a white-collar criminal. Kai laughed, a real laugh, warm and completely unguarded. Not a criminal. I promise. Then what? He spun me suddenly, dipping me low enough that my veil grazed the floor. When he pulled me back up, his mouth was an inch from mine. Let's just say I'm very effective at getting what I want. And right now, his hand pressed gently against the small of my back. What I want is to take my wife home. Heat flooded through me entirely against my better judgment. This was reckless. This was. His phone vibrated. He ignored it. It vibrated again. Then again. Then 3 times in rapid succession. With a quiet exhale, he pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and every trace of warmth evaporated instantly. What replaced it was something cold. Controlled. Lethal. I need to handle this, he said, voice clipped and businesslike. Stay here. He walked to the terrace and I watched through the glass as he spoke in rapid, sharp Korean, shoulders rigid with tension. Chloe materialized beside me with 2 champagne flutes. Okay, I need the full explanation. Who is this man and why does he look like he could dismantle a government with his bare hands? I genuinely have no idea, I admitted. But I just married him, so I suppose I'm going to find out. Through the terrace doors, I saw Kai end his call. He stood motionless for a moment, one hand pressed against the glass railing. Then 3 men in identical dark suits appeared beside him, moving with a precision that had absolutely nothing to do with wedding attendance. The way they positioned themselves around Kai. The slight deferential tilt when they addressed him. The way he issued 2 short sentences and all 3 of them immediately moved. Oh, Chloe breathed beside me. Your husband gives off very specific crime boss energy. My pulse kicked up several notches. Kai came back inside. His expression was perfectly smooth again, composed, warm, as though the terrace conversation had never happened. He reached me, lifted my hand, pressed his lips to my knuckles. We need to leave. Now. What? Why? Business. Something's come up. Kai, please. He met my eyes, and underneath all that careful control was something genuine. Trust me. I'll explain everything. But we need to go. I held his gaze for a long moment. Then, fine. But you owe me answers. Big ones. I know. 5 minutes later, we were in the back of a black Genesis, moving through the city at speed. Kai had his phone out, typing rapidly in Korean. I studied him in the low light. The precise way he sat, relaxed but never fully at rest. The quiet authority in every movement. The faint scar along his left jaw that told a story I hadn't heard yet. You're staring, he said without looking up. You're my husband. I've earned the right. The corner of his mouth moved. Fair. So, international trade and asset management. What do you actually trade? Leverage, mostly. He looked up and actually laughed. You're funny. I'm deflecting. It's how I process the fact that I impulsively married someone who might be operating outside several laws. I operate in gray areas, he said, pocketing his phone and turning to face me fully. My core business is legitimate. But I also handle security, logistics, private negotiations. I work with clients who require absolute discretion. You're a fixer. Among other things. I processed this. And the Korean crime organization thing? His expression went completely still. What Korean crime organization thing? The suited men who practically bowed to you. The way you carry yourself. The fact that you talked a complete stranger into marrying you in under an hour, that's either crime lord energy or you're the world's most committed improv performer. Kai studied me for a long, unreadable moment. Then he smiled. Fully. And it transformed his entire face. You're sharper than I anticipated. Is that a yes? It's a, let's discuss this somewhere private. The building his driver pulled up to was the kind of address that real estate listings describe as iconic. 42 floors of glass and steel in the city's most expensive district. This is your home. Our home, he said simply. Unless you'd prefer to go back to the apartment you shared with Marcus. Point taken. The penthouse was extraordinary. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Furniture that belonged in an architecture magazine. A kitchen that had clearly never seen a microwave meal. Everything rendered in black, slate, and brushed gold. Very sophisticated supervillain. Make yourself comfortable, Kai said, shrugging off his jacket. He loosened his tie, and I made a disciplined effort not to stare at the way his shirt fell across his shoulders. Are you going to tell me the truth? I asked, dropping onto the couch and kicking off my heels. Or do I need to find your liquor cabinet first? He walked to the bar. Poured 2 glasses of something amber and expensive. Handed me one. I lead an organization, he said. We manage sensitive situations for powerful clients. Security. Negotiations. Conflict resolution. The Korean Mafia. We prefer private family enterprise. I downed my drink in one motion. I married into the Korean Mafia. What you married into, Kai said, moving closer, is protection, loyalty, and a man who will never publicly humiliate you at your own wedding. That's a low bar, Kai. It's a bar your ex couldn't clear. I couldn't argue with that. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I don't involve innocent people in what I do. I don't hurt them. My work is about maintaining balance, making sure power doesn't get abused. You're a vigilante crime boss. I prefer ethical entrepreneur in a complicated industry. I burst out laughing. He looked deeply satisfied by this. You're ridiculous, I said. And you're remarkable. His hand came up to my face, thumb brushing gently across my cheek. You stood in that church and turned the worst moment of your life into a victory. That doesn't happen without real courage. Kai, I want this to be real, he said. Not performance. Not revenge. I want to actually know you, your history, what you're afraid of, what you want from your life. That's unexpectedly sincere for a crime lord. I contain multitudes. His mouth curved. Tell me to stop and I will. Tell me this is moving too fast. I grabbed his tie and pulled him down. Stop talking and kiss your wife. He did. And the man absolutely knew what he was doing. Much later, we lay in the most comfortable bed I had ever occupied, his fingers drawing slow patterns along my shoulder. Is this what our marriage is going to look like? I asked. Confronting enemies and then hiding in a penthouse? I hope not. He pressed his lips to my hair. I'd like some ordinary moments mixed in. Dinner reservations. Arguing about what film to watch. Getting lost somewhere neither of us has been. We can do that. We can do whatever you want. He tipped my chin up. This started as something impulsive, but I meant every word I said. I want you to be happy. Genuinely. I think I might already be, I said. Which is completely irrational given that 24 hours ago I was about to legally bind myself to the wrong person. Not the wrong person. Just the necessary detour to get to the right one. His phone buzzed. He checked it. Every muscle in his body went rigid. He showed me the screen. A photograph of us leaving the reception venue, taken from a distance, with a message beneath it. Lovely couple. Would hate to see something happen to them. They're bluffing, I said, though my stomach had dropped completely. Probably. The Park family prefers intimidation to action. Direct violence creates complications. That is not as comforting as you intended. He pulled me close. Nothing is going to happen to you. I need you to believe that. And the strangest part? I did. The Park family. Kai's direct competitors. Running parallel operations without any of his apparent ethical framework. And somehow, Marcus had decided to hand them information about Kai's business dealings. Client lists. Financial architecture. Private communications he'd accessed years ago when Kai briefly brought him into lower-level operations. Marcus, it turned out, had been considerably more dangerous than just a bad fiancé. The decision was made, we'd go on our honeymoon anyway. Show the Parks that fear wasn't something that lived in our vocabulary. Kai had a private villa on Jeju Island. Naturally, he also had a private jet to get us there. Is this excessive? I asked, sinking into cream leather seating. Yes, he said simply. It's also more secure than commercial travel. Fewer variables. Right. Safety. Definitely the reason. Would you believe environmental optimization? Not remotely. Then I won't insult your intelligence. We spent most of the flight talking. I learned he had a weakness for old Korean cinema and genuinely terrible wordplay. He learned I had an irrational, bone-deep fear of birds. Birds, he repeated, visibly fighting a smile. They are direct descendants of theropod dinosaurs, Kai. With hollow bones and unblinking eyes. It's objectively terrifying. You walked into a standoff between two armed crime families without flinching. Pigeons are different. He laughed until his eyes watered. I threw a monogrammed pillow at him. What's your weakness then? I demanded. He looked at me for a moment. You, he said simply. You're my weakness. My heart did something completely involuntary. That was dangerously smooth. I'm a dangerous man. The villa was extraordinary, all clean lines and traditional Korean architectural details, perched on a cliff above the water. Private beach. Infinity pool. Sunsets that looked digitally enhanced. We had 3 perfect days. Swimming in the ocean. Eating dinner on the terrace with the sound of waves underneath every conversation. Learning each other in the quiet, ordinary ways that matter. How he took his coffee, what made him laugh without warning, the particular silence he settled into when he was thinking hard about something. On the 3rd morning, Taeyong called. Kai's head of security, a man built like structural reinforcement, with gentle eyes that didn't match the rest of him. Kai's expression as he listened told me everything before he said a word. The Parks moved, he said when he hung up. They hit one of our logistics centers overnight. No casualties, but significant financial damage. Because of me, I said immediately. No. He took my hands, firm and certain. Because they identified an opening and moved on it. This was coming regardless. You're the excuse, not the cause. What followed was 3 of the most chaotic days I had ever experienced, including a warehouse confrontation, a standoff that I absolutely was not supposed to be present for, a data breach executed by Kai's tech specialist June, who looked like he belonged on a billboard and could apparently compromise any server on Earth in under 4 minutes, and a negotiation that ended with the park organization standing down, Marcus being quietly shipped to a recovery house 3 cities away, and Kai pressing a long, relieved kiss to my forehead in a parking structure while Taeyong pretended not to notice. You walked into that warehouse, Kai said in the car afterward, his voice somewhere between furious and awed. I told you specifically. You told me to stay in the car. I chose to reinterpret that instruction. You are going to age me considerably. You said that already. It becomes more true every hour. That night, back in the penthouse, we finally collapsed. 1 week, I said, staring at the ceiling. We've been married 1 week. And we've already survived a blackmail attempt, an organized crime rival, and a hostage situation. He pulled me against him. By most metrics, we're thriving. Is it always going to be like this? I genuinely hope not. He was quiet for a moment. I want boring stretches. Actual vacations. I want to introduce you to my mother, who will love you before you panic about that. We've known each other 7 days, Kai. And I love you. The words settled into the room, completely calm, like he'd known them for longer than I had. I thought about the church. The laughter that came out of me instead of tears. The man in the last row who stood up and walked toward me like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I love you too, I said. Which is irrational and perfect, and I've completely stopped apologizing for it. He pressed his lips to my temple. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we plan a real vacation. What does a crime lord honeymoon look like? Greece, if you want beaches. Japan, if you want to meet my mother. Can we do both? We can do anything you want. He kissed me softly. That's the whole point. The next morning I woke to the smell of coffee, and something distinctly scorched. I found Kai in the kitchen, staring at a pan with the expression of a man who had faced down armed rivals but had finally met his match. What happened? I was attempting eggs. He turned off the burner. The internet made it look straightforward. The internet lied. I hip-checked him gently. Move over. I thought you said you couldn't cook. I said I couldn't cook to save my life. Scrambled eggs don't count as a survival situation. We stood at the stove together, him following instructions badly, both of us laughing when things went sideways. His phone sat face down on the counter, ignored. I could get used to this, he said quietly, watching me plate the eggs. Burned breakfast and all? This. Just being here with you. I looked at him, really looked. The man who had walked toward me in a cathedral when anyone sensible would have stayed seated. Who had offered me a choice when I had none. Who had meant every impossible word he said. Me too, I said. His phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at it. Then at me. Then he turned it face down again. It can wait, he said. My wife is more important. My wife. I was going to be hearing that for the rest of my life. And you know what? That sounded like exactly where I was supposed to be. Drop her in the comments if you're ready for part 2, because what happens when his mother finds out is a whole separate story.